Okay. I think, by George, that we're good there. All right. So now we just have this to go. Whoa, hello. That's not right. We'll do that. Let's look at this 3 stream. Okay, that looks good there. Okay. Let's go live. And welcome in, everybody, to the Last Row Podcast, a fan's perspective on sports, where it's real fans, real talk, front row to it all. I'm Brian here inside the ARM Media Solutions Studios on this Wednesday, July the 8th, 2026. Hope you're happy, hope you're healthy, hope you're well, wherever it is you are listening and finding us tonight, whether that is on Apple Podcasts or through Spotify. Thank you so much for being part of the program. We appreciate each and every one of you for listening, for subscribing, for taking part in the show. Thank you so much. All right, and we are starting off tonight once again as we are restricted. So if you are catching us here on TikTok Live, thanks, TikTok, for restricting us. Greatly appreciate you. Not. You can find us on TikTok Live at last.row.podcast. You can check us out also on X and X Live and YouTube Live at Last Row Podcast. You can also find us online on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com. That is where you can find links to all of our sponsors, including I Know a Guy Remodeling, as well as Forever Finds Thrift. So big thanks to all of them for their continued support of the show. Greatly appreciate it. All right, let's talk here and let's get into it, shall we? We talked last night about how we were going to discuss and bring up all of the new NFL teams and all of the new year with the NFL and how everything is gearing up. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And so we are going to do just that. We're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to talk about the LA Rams tonight. We're going to start the night off talking a little bit of hockey news. And it's not good if you're a Blackhawks fan. And let's just be honest here. It's becoming all too familiar for Blackhawks fans. And what I mean by that, and actually before we get started, I'm just going to do something here very quickly because I want to. Okay, let's do this. Let's see here. Bart, good evening. Johnny, good evening. Welcome into the show. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk here about Connor Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks and what that means. And I'm just going to be honest with you. As a Blackhawks fan, it is very concerning to me that this team continually relies on Connor Bedard. And look, I love Connor Bedard. I think he has been one of the best young players in the NHL. I think he's criminally underrated. But I think part of the reason why he's underrated is because of the fact that he is injury prone. And Connor Bedard will be out for the next foreseeable future because he is injured for the next 4 months. And it's all because he is, unfortunately, for lack of a better term, he's injury prone. He re-injured and re-aggravated the shoulder that he injured last season. He is going to be out now for the next 4 months, which means he will miss the first month of the season for the Blackhawks. And that is a big problem. And that's a huge issue. And quite honestly, it is something that is really, really bad for the Blackhawks, and it's something that is um, it's disheartening for Blackhawks fans, honestly, because you're going into next season thinking that Bedard is going to be your captain, your leader. He's going to be the next Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane and everything like that. And unfortunately, he has, without question, been unreliable. And the fact that he's unreliable at this point is a problem. The fact that he is unreliable to so many different fan bases for the Blackhawks, and and look, he's just not. He's criminally underrated skill wise, but he's vastly overrated health wise, and that's the problem here. And so for Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks, the issue is very simple. You have to stay healthy. If you don't stay healthy, you're not going to play. You're not going to play, which means the Hawks aren't going to win, which means you're going to be incredibly unhappy. And for the Blackhawks, that is something that this franchise cannot afford to have. They cannot afford to have another mediocre year. And if they do have another mediocre year, it's going to be because they don't have Connor Bedard with them. And without having Connor Bedard, without having for lack of a better term, a team that they can rely upon, it is going to be very, very difficult for them. And I just find it very, very hard to root for him at this point, because I just feel very, for lack of a better term, I just feel very sad for the Blackhawks. And it's because they are investing in this young man and they are not getting anything out of him. And I truly feel that this is just another bad, for lack of a better term, curse, if you will. And I think that that ultimately it's going to be a big issue here for the Hawks because of the fact they can't rely on him. And when you can't rely on him, you have zero opportunities to improve your team. Now, what does this mean for the other Blackhawks players? Well, quite honestly, I'm going to tell you right here and now. I think that it means quite a bit. And Frank Nazar is the guy that I believe is going to be the one that is going to step up the most. And Frank Nazar deserves to. And Frank Nazar needs to. Now, could this be the chance for them to bring Patrick Kane and or Alex DeBrincat home? I think it does. I think it's the opportunity. I think it allows them to now have the opportunity to bring home two players that, quite honestly, the Hawks, I think, were upset that they let go. I think they were frustrated that they had to let them go. And I think that they recognized the error of their ways back then. Now, look, let's just call it what it is. When Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat left the Hawks, it was amid a huge amount of controversy. You had the Blackhawks that were in the midst of the sexual assault case, if you will, with Kyle Beach and other players that were harassed by numerous guys in the organization. And again, per Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Joel Quenneville. Look, it cost Quenneville a couple years coaching. People didn't want Quenneville back with in the NHL, and rightfully so. Look, it cost Stan Bowman his job. Now he's picked back up very quickly in Edmonton, and he's trying to recapture a little of the glory. But realistically, he is just as guilty as anybody regarding what that, or how that all went down. So for the Blackhawks, they have the opportunity now. They have a great opportunity to get things right, to continue to work on bolstering their roster, to make things easier for the young guys. If they do that, great. They're set. If they don't do that, if they're going to rely and put pressure on Frank Nazar, if they're going to rely and keep the pressure on Nazar and all these other young guys, it's going to make things very difficult. And quite honestly, I think that's the worst thing that they could do. I think, having Nazar available and having Nazar be the guy moving forward is absolutely imperative for the growth of this franchise. And if they do that, if they're able to have Frank Nazar take over and be the strong voice in that locker room, if they're able to do that, that takes the pressure off of Connor Bedard. And I think ultimately that's what needs to happen here. They need to take that pressure off of Connor Bedard. If they can do that, if they're able to get Connor Bedard in a place where he doesn't have to be the man, he doesn't have to be the guy that all the pressure falls upon. If he's able to do that and kind of relax and have somebody else take the captainship, take the pressure off of him, I think that ultimately makes Connor Bedard a much better and more dangerous player. And I think that bodes better for the Blackhawks. Now look, this surgery that he had done, he's going to miss at least the first month of the season. It's the first 84-game season in the NHL's new collective bargaining agreement, with the start of the season moved up to late September. MVR, good evening. Bedard turns 21 on July 17th. Now, let's just put that into perspective here a little bit. He's 21 years of age. He's still growing and maturing into the player that they want him to be. And while that ultimately makes it more difficult, it also means that Bedard has to grow up very quickly. He won Rookie of the Year in 23 and 24. He's entering his fourth NHL season. He led the Hawks last year with 75 points in 69 games, scoring 30 goals. For his career, he has 203 points in 219 games, skating to a minus 98. He has yet to appear in the Stanley Cup playoffs for the rebuilding Hawks. The Hawks went 29, 39, and 14, an 11-point improvement on the previous season. They finished number 31 in the NHL in each of the last 3 years. He is a restricted free agent, having completed the final year of his entry-level contract. GM Kyle Davidson, Kyle from Chicago, has said he won't comment on negotiation until there's a deal with his star center. But those talks might have been complicated by the recent offer sheet signed by the Anaheim Ducks restricted free agent center Leo Carlson with the Philadelphia Flyers. Carlson, who was selected second to Bedard, will have an average annual salary of $18 million beginning next season. That's the highest of any player in the NHL. That tells you right there what they feel about Leo Carlson. So for the Blackhawks, they've got a major decision to make. And that decision, quite simply, is this. Do they re-sign Bedard to an extension? Do they trust the process that this 21-year-old young man is going to be healthy down the stretch? Or is something else going to happen? And that's the what if now with the Blackhawks. That's the what if with Connor Bedard. That's the what if. And that's going to be a big problem. And if the Blackhawks don't figure out a way to get the pressure off of him, if they don't figure out a way to alleviate the stress, and it's more than likely self-imposed pressure. Let's just call it what it is here. Okay, it's more than likely self-imposed pressure. But you look at this, the age of this team, okay? You've got Bedard, who's 20, Sasha Boisevert, who's 20, Ryan Donato, who's the grizzled veteran at 30, Anton Frondel, who's 19, Ryan Green, who's 22, Oliver Moore, who's 21, Frank Nazar, who's 22. You got Tero Teravainen, 31, Dominic Tonato is 32, Tyler Bertuzzi, 31, Jordan Greenway, 29, Nick Lardis at 20, Brett Sine at 30, Landon Slaggert at 24 at the left wing. At right wing, you've got Cole Smith, who's 30. You've got Dylan Anhorn on defense. Bowen Byram, who's 25, recently acquired for the number 4 pick. You've got Ian Cole, Ethan Del Mastro, Kevin Fitzgerald, Matt Gracelick, who's 32. Fitzgerald's 29. Wyatt Kaiser's 23. Korchinski is 22. Artem Levshinov is 20. Connor Mackey is 29. Rinzel is 22. Alec Vlasic is 25. Their goaltender, Spencer Knight, is 25. Arvid Soderblom is 26. Mitchell Weeks is 25. Their coach is Jeff Blashill. Blashill said last season he was not going to repeat what happened this year. It was going to be a different result for the Blackhawks. Well, now they've got to figure out a way to get goals scored, assists made, and what better way to do it than to bring home Patrick Kane and to bring home Alex DeBrincat. You bring home those two, a lot of your offensive woes have been solved. You take the pressure off of Connor Bedard by making Frank Nazar your captain. You're getting a young defenseman this year. You're getting guys that are growing into their profession, like Oliver Moore, who I think is going to be an absolute stud in this league. He can skate with the best of them. He's a great two-way player, in my opinion. Frank Nazar is the same way. And I think Nazar is going to be a very, very, very good player in this league. And I think that's going to be your best bet moving forward. So for the Blackhawks, they've got some major decisions to make. And it's going to have to start without their best player in Connor Bedard. And I would argue that Frank Nazar has a stake in that claim as one of the Hawks' best players. We'll see what happens. All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk here about a little bit of breaking news that came out here just a bit ago. And that is that Mark Cuban Mark Cuban here earlier this evening is accusing the Dallas Mavericks governor or principal owner, Patrick Dumont, of freezing the team's former majority owner out of the business opportunities in a proposed move of the club out of downtown. The Dallas Morning News, and this is per ESPN and the AP, the Associated Press, reported on Wednesday that Cuban alleges Dumont has engaged in adversarial business practices in his bid to move the team about 10 miles north of downtown to the former site of a Dallas mall. Maverick spokeswoman in Cuban declined to comment. The billionaire businessman sold his majority stake in 2023 to the families of Miriam Adelson and Dumont, who is Adelson's son-in-law. Now, look, I like Mark Cuban just as much as anybody. I think he's been a great ambassador for the game of basketball. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for how basketball, especially the Dallas Mavericks brand, has grown worldwide. Thanks to his partnership with Dirk Nowitzki, of course, all those number of years that they were together. Here's my problem with this, Mark. If Mark Cuban feels like he's getting frozen out of the, for lack of a better term, if he feels like he's getting frozen out of the information by the new owner, guess what? You can feel that pain. That's fine. Jay Scott, good evening. You can feel that pain. You can feel that frustration. But you sold your majority stake in 2023. You're not the principal owner anymore. So now you can piss and holler and bitch and moan about it, but you don't have the final say. The new owners do. And if the new owners want to move this franchise 10 miles north, they have the absolute right to do so. And Mark Cuban feels like he's being frozen out. So there's that element to the NBA right now that is happening. And I find it fascinating that Mark Cuban feels like he's being pushed to the side by the new Mavericks owner. And quite honestly, if the new Mavericks owner wants to move them, they can absolutely do so. He is the majority owner. Now look, is it better business to, keep Mark Cuban happy? Of course it is. But realistically, does he have to worry about satisfying Mark Cuban's ego? Absolutely not. Speaking of the NBA, according to Evan Sidery and Shams Charania, the Denver Nuggets have been removed from LeBron James' list of potential destinations. There are 5 teams that remain: the Cavs, the Heat, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Timberwolves, and the Warriors. Now, I said earlier this week that if he went to Golden State, I'd feel really bad for Steve Kerr. And here's why. If he ends up in Golden State, it is going to be a constant bitching fest between Draymond Green and LeBron James on every other possession for fouls, and how they didn't deserve that foul or how there's a foul called on them. And it's going to become a bigger issue. I think the team that makes the most sense is the Heat. Is not the Heat, but rather the Timberwolves. Imagine the dynamic between he and Anthony Edwards and Ayo Dosunmu. LeBron respects defense. Remember how upset he was. Remember how upset he was when quite honestly the Lakers took away Alex Caruso, or the Bulls did, from the Lakers. And LeBron was very upset by that. LeBron didn't like that at all. And that is something that he has truly felt. And let's be honest here, he's never fully recovered from. And LeBron he respects defense more than he does offense because he knows that defense wins championships. Cleveland Cavaliers, it's not to Cleveland because they just re-signed Donovan Mitchell to a 4-year, $45 million deal. So that's not going to work. Ultimately here, you're down to Philadelphia, who just got Jaylen Brown, so that's not going to make really any sense to have LeBron James there. That's going to stunt the growth of all of your latest and greatest, young players, Tyrone Maxey and VJ Edgecombe, and you've got Joel Embiid, who's not healthy. You've got LeBron, who typically will miss games left and right, front and back, up and down. And again, I don't believe that LeBron is where he needs to be, and I don't believe that, quite honestly, going to Philly is going to do anything for him. I don't think going to Golden State's going to do anything. Look, if you want to go somewhere and do something, it's not in Cleveland. You've already won there. It's not Miami. You've already won there. It's Minnesota. You want to leave a legacy. Get the Timberwolves to the finals. Now, can LeBron be a very strong number 2? Absolutely. No question. But is LeBron the dominant player that he once was? Absolutely not. So therefore, if you go to Minnesota, Anthony Edwards is going to be the one. He's going to be the alpha. But there's going to be a very strong 1B right behind him. A Batman and Robin combination. And I think that could help propel the T-Wolves into a top 3 seed in the West. Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Minnesota. And it makes things a lot easier on LeBron when you have a really good player in Anthony Edwards, a good player in Ayo Dosunmu, who is incredibly underrated. And again, I think, quite honestly, you have a really good opportunity to catapult this franchise into the next stratosphere if you're able to get them a title or get them to the finals. At that point in time, you have truly cemented yourself as a very good player and somebody that you can absolutely rely upon. And I am just going to tell you right here and now, if it's he and Anthony Edwards, I am here for it. I am absolutely here for it. And I sincerely hope, good evening, Reagan. I sincerely hope, and Dale, that if LeBron goes there, if LeBron goes to Minnesota, that would be the best landing spot for him. It's not going to be Cleveland. It's not going to be Philly. It's not going to be Golden State. But look, let's call it what it is here. Golden State has been the favorite since day one. Golden State has been the favorite since day one. And if Golden State ends up with LeBron James, it's going to absolutely not be a shock to anybody. It's going to be a greater, for lack of a better term, he says he wants to compete for a title, right? So what better way to compete for a title than to go to a young up-and-coming team? Not a team that's aging. not a team that is realistically on their own last dance with Golden State. Philadelphia, you're not going to have Joel Embiid healthy. Could you put LeBron then at the 5? Sure, absolutely. Then you're not disrupting Tyrone Maxey, VJ Edgecombe. You're not disrupting any of their development. So could he go east? Yes. My opinion, he should end up in Minnesota. If he ends up in Philly, If he ends up in Cleveland, But if he goes to Minnesota, that could be very interesting. And I could see that. And I actually would like that for LeBron. He could go there. He could help develop Anthony Edwards. And from there, if he goes there to Minnesota, think about how intriguing that team could be with Anthony Edwards and with LeBron James. Just something to ponder and to think about. All right, we're going to take a quick timeout. We're going to hear from our friends over at I Know a Guy Remodeling. And then when we come back here on the Last Row podcast, we're going to continue, I should say, our NFL breakdown of the NFC West with the San Francisco 49ers and the LA Rams. Team previews coming up right here where it's real fans, real talk, front row to it all. Right here on the Last Row podcast. You know, when something needs to be remodeled, don't spend hours scrolling online reviews. Don't spend hours scrolling on TikTok for DIY. Don't cross your fingers hoping you hired the right contractor. Just remember one name. I Know a Guy Remodeling. From kitchens to bathrooms to floorings to basements. Complete home renovations, new landscaping, new decks. They bring professionalism, craftsmanship, and reliability to every project. Your home deserves quality work from people who genuinely care about getting it right the first time. That's why we are proud to have them as part of the Last Row podcast family. If you're planning a project this year, this summer, this fall, give I Know a Guy Remodeling the opportunity to earn your business. You can check out a link to their Facebook page on our website, www.lastrowpodcast.com, because everybody deserves to know a guy, and now you do. I Know a Guy Remodeling. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Last Row podcast, a fan's perspective on sports, where it's real fans, real talk, front row to it all. All right, let's continue here in talking about and dissecting and bringing together our NFL training camp previews, okay? And last night we started with the defending NFC and Super Bowl champions in the Seattle Seahawks. And look, the NFC West is stacked. We know that, okay? We know how good it can be and how good it will be. But let's talk about a team whose window I think is starting to close. And that's the San Francisco 49ers, who per ESPN have the 11th best roster coming into training camp. At quarterback is Brock Purdy, running back Christian McCaffrey, fullback Kyle Juszczyk, wide receiver has been upgraded thanks to Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall, Christian Kirk, tight end is George Kittle. They still have one of the best left tackles in all of football in Trent Williams. Left guard is Robert Jones. At center, Jake Brendel. On defense, Alfred Collins leads a trio of defensive tackles with C.J. West. Nick Bosa is on the edge along with Mykel Williams. Linebackers, Fred Warner, the grizzled veteran who was injured last season. Dre Greenlaw. Then you've got cornerbacks, Green, Stout, and Lenore. Those are the projected starters for the Niners. Absolutely, Reagan. That's what we were aiming for. Because fantasy football is coming up. We know that. All right, so let's talk here about the Niners. Now, their strengths. Their biggest strength per ESPN is quarterback. I don't agree with that. And here's why. I believe that their quarterback position and their running back position, now along with their wide receiver position and tight end position. I know I'm naming 4 core parts here of their offense. The problem with all 4 of those positions, quarterback, running back, wideout, tight end. The problem with those 4 areas, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Mike Evans, George Kittle. What do they all have in common? Well, are they good players? Yes. Are some of them aging? Yes. Are they injury prone? Yes. That's the issue with the San Francisco 49ers that they are going to have to address. They're all injury prone. That's why I don't agree that Kyle Shanahan, and look, I love Kyle Shanahan. I think he is one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. Without question, though, you have guys in your key positions, including left tackle. We haven't talked about it yet. Monty, good evening. We haven't talked at all about left tackle and Trent Williams. But for the 49ers, quarterback, running back, wide receiver now with Mike Evans, and tight end with George Kittle, and I'm going to throw left tackle in there with Trent Williams. They're all aging and they're all injury prone. So, per ESPN, they say here that Brock Purdy's continued strong play coupled with Mac Jones' solid performance in relief duty is enough to push the quarterback to the top. Durability has been an issue for Purdy, but his efficiency has been elite as he has finished his 3 seasons as starter, ranked 1st, 7th, and most recently 2nd in QBR or quarterback rating. He threw 20 touchdowns in only 9 games, a pace matched only by Matt Stafford. Now look, am I saying Brock Purdy's not a good quarterback? No, absolutely not. I think Brock Purdy, look, he came from a Big 12 program where he was a 4-year starter. He learned how to play the game. He learned how to read defenses. He understood what the position, what it took to be good in that position. So now you put him in a 7th round draft pick, and he is doing incredible things in a very quarterback-friendly offense. But he's injury-prone. And I'm sorry, Mac Jones is not Brock Purdy. Mac Jones is going to cost you some games. Now, can Mac Jones have a couple good games? Absolutely he can, yes. But the other part of this that nobody's talking about just yet is this. The San Francisco 49ers lost one of their best coaches this past offseason. And by lost, he got hired by a division rival. I'm talking about former tight end coach and running game coordinator Brian Fleury, who is now the new offensive coordinator in Seattle with Mike Macdonald. Fleury is very familiar with the 49ers offense. He's very familiar with George Kittle in the running game and how Kyle Shanahan likes to, do the running game. Of course, Mike Macdonald doesn't need much help. He's a very good defensive coordinator and head coach. But the Niners lost a guy that was Kyle Shanahan's right-hand man since 2019. That's how long he's been with Kyle Shanahan. So that's a big loss for the Niners. Now, look, George Kittle, I think, is fantastic. I think he's great. I also think he's injury prone. Christian McCaffrey won't get through the full season. Neither will Mike Evans because he'll inevitably pull a hamstring, as he always does, and be out for a month. Brock Purdy will have something, either a shoulder or an elbow or a hand, that goes wrong. And then you look at their defense. Now, their defensive line is a little bit suspect. They finished 31st in pressures and last in sacks with 20 in 2025. Some help was added from, and I'm going to butcher the name, but Osa Odighizuwa, who was effective while playing 62% of Dallas's defensive snaps during his first 5 pro seasons. Behind him are second-year players Alfred Collins and C.J. West. The X factor is going to be Mike Evans. But back to the defense real quick. Fred Warner is getting older. So is Dre Greenlaw. That linebacking core is getting much older. And look, that linebacking core for San Francisco, ever since Vic Fangio was there with Jim Harbaugh, became a staple. As, you know, they talk about tight end university and how it originated there in San Francisco and Kansas City with Kittle and Kelsey. I also think that linebacker university reemerged in San Francisco with Patrick Willis and now Fred Warner. And Fred Warner is getting older. He's getting slower. I think their defense is suspect. I think their defense is old. And I'm concerned, quite honestly, about how good their defense is going to play. And Navarro Bowman. Yes, Monty, you're exactly right. So, yes, you may have added an offensive weapon in Mike Evans, who ESPN calls their X factor. I don't agree with the X factor. My X factor for the 49ers is this. It's their training staff. Are they going to be healthy this offseason, this preseason, this regular season? If they're not, it's going to be a very long year by the Bay. If they are, it's going to be very competitive between the Seahawks, the Niners, and our next team, the LA Rams. So now, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams and their roster construction. And look, let's just call it what it is. The Rams are as good as advertised. The Rams should be a legitimate Super Bowl contender without the addition of Aaron Donald. So let's talk here. The Rams, per ESPN, are listed as the number 1 ranked roster heading in to training camp at quarterback. And these are the projected starters. Okay, at quarterback, you've got Matthew Stafford. At running back, Kyren Williams. Wide receiver, we know him well. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, and Kanata Mumfield. Tight end, Terrence Ferguson, Colby Parkinson. Left tackle, Alaric Jackson. Left guard, Steve Avila. Center, Coleman Shelton. Right guard, Kevin Dotson. Right tackle, Warren McClendon Jr. On defense, that's where the biggest improvement has taken place. Defensive tackle, you've got Kobe Turner. Defensive tackle, Poona Ford. Defensive tackle, Braden Fiske. At the edge, you've got Byron Young and acquired Myles Garrett. At linebacker, you've got Nate Landman and Omar Speights. Cornerback, you acquired Trent McDuffie. You also picked up Jalen Watson, Quentin Lake, Cam Curl at safety, Cameron Kinchins at the other safety. This is not including Aaron Donald. If Aaron Donald joins that defense, Monty, I know you're going to have an opinion on this. That defense is already going to be very good. That defense is already going to be very, very good. Now, I think, and again, this is just me, that overall, if Aaron Donald comes back, that defense automatically becomes their strongest factor. And Chris Shula, who's a very young defensive coordinator, came into his own a year ago. Now, by adding a guy like Myles Garrett, who's, yes, is a little bit of a long in the tooth, but he is the most disruptive pass rusher that there has been since Aaron Donald. Monty, I get what you're saying, that Donald's a rotational player. I get it. But I also feel that the presence of Aaron Donald, if he's there, if he plays, is going to push this team directly to the front of the NFC West. You also have Matt Stafford, who is coming off a league MVP. Now, I believe this is going to be his last year. But you talk about a match made in heaven. You talk about the trade that happened between the Rams and the Lions when the Rams got Matt Stafford and the Lions got Jared Goff. At first, it looked like a match made in heaven for both teams. Jared Goff looked incredible in Ben Johnson's offense. But then Ben Johnson left. And Jared Goff has struggled. Or hasn't put up the numbers that he could have or did previously. Matt Stafford, on the other hand, has won a Super Bowl, has won a league MVP. So my thought process is this. Quite honestly, Matthew Stafford's going to, if he's healthy, that's the big key here. If he's not healthy, well, then you have Stetson Bennett and Ty Simpson as your backups, two very young quarterbacks. Now, do I think Ty Simpson was drafted into a very good situation? Absolutely, I do. Yes. He absolutely was put in the best position possible to be drafted by the Rams, to study under Matt Stafford. However, Ty Simpson is not Matt Stafford. If Matt Stafford is hurt, struggles in terms of health, the Rams are going to struggle offensively. Kyren Williams is as good as they are at running back. He fits that offense so well. You also have Sean McVay, and Monty, you stole my thunder here. If they win a Super Bowl, I think you're going to see Matt Stafford leave, and I think you're going to see Sean McVay leave. I also wonder if Aaron Donald comes back for 1 year and helps get them another title, then you know he's done. And they're not going to be able to sign him for big money. I think he would come back on the cheap, to be honest, with the opportunity to play with Myles Garrett. I love the folks in the chat on TikTok. I truly do. We just had somebody come in, Joe Sandman, who said Knicks are one-hit wonders. I love it. Talking football, and we get a drive-by for the Knicks. I love it. Makes me laugh. Thank you, Joe. Now, I want to talk about the secondary for a moment, because the secondary for them, I think, is going to be a much improved factor for this team. And I think that for the LA Rams, getting Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson and having them in this system with Chris Shula is going to be a match made in heaven. And I truly like the fact that these are young guys that are still under contract. They've got a lot to prove. They're going to a team that, look, let's be honest, they're favored to win the Super Bowl. So if they can do that, if they can be favored to win the Super Bowl just by adding Myles Garrett, just by adding Trent McDuffie, having Matt Stafford, keeping Davante Adams for another year. Now, ESPN says that their biggest strength is their quarterback. Of course, that's true. I also think, and quite honestly, I also think that the other factor here is the running back. Because what's a quarterback's best friend? A good running game, right? Kyren Williams provides that. So, Stafford is 38. He's an old man in terms of the NFL years. He's taken a lot of beatings. But I truly believe that Stafford, if he's healthy, is still one of the best quarterbacks. You pair him with the brilliant mind of Sean McVay, it's a pairing that will go down as one of the best in the modern NFL era. Their biggest weakness is tight end per ESPN. I agree. They have no tight end game. Now, if they were to get somebody, and I'm just throwing this out there, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they were to get somebody like a Cole Kmet in a trade, that would improve them very, very much, and then they would become multi-dimensional offensively and have a tight end that could stretch the field if they got one. But, Tyler Higbee's 33. He's no longer an every down player. Colby Parkinson and Davis Allen are now, kind of thrust into that position. They've got a second-round pick in Terrence Ferguson and Max Clark. Ferguson could make them if he has a breakout year, could be that added necessity on offense that they could get from a solid tight end. Oh, bearded one, welcome in. The X factor, it's quite simple. It's the training staff again. It's the health. If Mike Evans is healthy, if Matt Stafford is healthy, the Rams are going to be a very difficult team to beat. If Matt Stafford is not healthy, I think it's a different story. Now, here's the other part of it. And I'm going to say a couple things here that might be a little bit controversial, might be a little hot take, whatever you want to call it. But if Puka Nacua struggles, and if Davante Adams is injured, and Matt Stafford doesn't live up to the MVP because he's hurt or whatever, you could see, and I'm just saying this, you could see them, and I could see them moving on from Puka Nacua. Because they're tired of the headache. They don't want to deal with it. They could recoup some of their draft capital that they've lost, where they say F them picks, right? But if Nacua isn't as good as he was, I'm talking mentally. If Nacua is off in La La Land, and he's just not present, that to me will have as big of a impact on this team as Stafford's injury and health. Now, do I believe that the LA Rams are the favorite right now to win the Super Bowl. No, I don't. Here's the reason why. There's an old adage. It started being talked about in the mid-'80s, down in North Carolina and down in Georgia. And it was said, quote, to be the man, you've got to beat the man. And until somebody comes along and dethrones the Seattle Seahawks as the class of the NFC and or the class of the NFL, my thought process is this. The Rams are very good, but the road to the Super Bowl still goes through Seattle. You add Aaron Donald to the Rams. I then believe the road to the Super Bowl, while Seattle is the defending champions, I think then Seattle goes in as a wild card and the Rams take the division. You're talking two major X factors here between both of these teams, and they involve the quarterback. Matt Stafford for the Rams, Sam Darnold for the Seahawks. If Sam Darnold struggles, if Sam Darnold has an off year because of the new OC that he's familiar with in Seattle, if Matt Stafford is injured, then you could see the 49ers make their way in. And Monty, you bring up a great point, and that's this. Minus the Patriots in the 2000s, rarely do teams repeat in the Super Bowl. It's very difficult to do. But if there's a defensive coach in the NFL that I believe could do it, it's absolutely Mike Macdonald. And I believe Mike Macdonald could absolutely take that defense one more time over to the promised land. And I'm just saying, look, I don't expect it to happen because, look, it's very difficult to repeat. It's incredibly hard to repeat. But realistically, could the Seahawks do it? Sure. Because, look, with that team, you need a game manager. You don't need a star quarterback, right? You need somebody to manage the game. And that, I believe, is what Sam Darnold would do. He would be able to do that. All right, let's talk here for a moment, if we can, about the other team in that division. And that's the Arizona Cardinals. Now, look, this is as big of a dumpster fire as there is in the NFL right now. You have a quarterback who's a projected starter in Jacoby Brissett, who didn't do OTAs with a new coach who's an offensive-minded coach. You have a disgruntled wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. You've got a running back that's as dynamic of a running back as there is, and as there was that came out in the draft in Jeremiah Love. I think Jeremiah Love is absolutely going to be a stud in the NFL. The Cardinals are ranked with the 29th best roster coming in to training camp. Their biggest strength, per ESPN, is tight end. That starts and ends with Trey McBride, who's emerged as one of the NFL's top playmakers at the position. He's 26 years old. He's the only tight end in league history with 110-plus catches in more than one season. In 2025, he became the only tight end to reach 120 catches, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns in a season. He is their offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a little unproven yet, in my opinion. Jacoby Brissett needs to stop acting like Aaron Rodgers. He's never put up Aaron Rodgers type numbers. He's never won an MVP. Therefore, in my opinion, Jacoby Brissett needs to shut up and play the position. Now, the biggest weakness per ESPN is just that, the quarterback position. Kyler Murray's gone, leaving Brissett as the possible Week 1 starter. The veteran racked up stats in starting 12 games last year with 3,300 passing yards and 23 touchdowns. But Arizona's throwing a league high rate, partially due to always being behind, was a primary factor. Brissett finished 24th among 28 qualified quarterbacks in QBR at 41.2. Gardner Minshew, the second and third round rookie Carson Beck, could also get some play. I think, quite honestly, and I'm just going to put it out there, I think Carson Beck outplays Jacoby Brissett. I think Carson Beck could outplay him and start the season. What does Mike LaFleur have to lose? If you start Jacoby Brissett, realistically, you're going to end up with Gardner Minshew, who's going to get hurt then. So realistically, you're going to start your rookie quarterback. So why not just do that from the start? Let the kid go out there, take control of the franchise, and see what he can do. Now, the X factor per ESPN is wide receiver Michael Wilson. In weeks 1 through 10, Wilson managed a meager 0.8 yards per route run, making him one of the least efficient wide receivers in the league. But from week 11 on, with Marvin Harrison Jr. out for much of that time, his production ballooned to 2.6 yards per route run, 12th best among wide receivers in those weeks. The Cardinals' season is all about finding out who can be their pillars moving forward, and that includes Wilson's long-term role with the franchise. Now, there's one player that hasn't been mentioned yet that's on the defense, and that's Josh Sweat. And the reason why we haven't really talked about their defense is because Josh Sweat might be on the move. And if Sweat's on the move, that's going to greatly impact their defense. So you've got Walter Nolan III at defensive tackle, Roy Lopez at the other DT, Darius Robinson at the other, Josh Sweat and Baron Browning at the edge, Mack Wilson Sr. at linebacker along with Cody Simon, and then Will Johnson, Sean Murphy-Bunting at the corners, Garrett Williams at the corner, and then Budda Baker, who I still feel like is an underrated safety. Edge rusher is B.J. Ojulari, who could get a lot of time if Sweat gets moved. Ojulari has to step up and fulfill the potential he showed as a second-round pick. But he has not recovered well from a knee injury. Let's just call this what it is. Arizona is back to being one of the worst-run organizations in professional sports. They have a quarterback that's acting like a diva. They have a new coach that has never been a head coach. He comes from a very good coaching tree in Sean McVay, but will he replicate or have the same success as other players or as other coaches from that tree, as other branches, if you will? That's yet to be seen. Arizona needs a fresh start, and that's why they brought in Mike LaFleur, to give them that fresh start. I like the Cardinals. I always have, ever since I was a child. But until the Bidwell family gets out of it, they're going to continue to every few years change coaches, every few years change quarterbacks, and continue the cycle of mediocrity. Monty, I see what you're saying about trading Sweat. You would have to take back somebody that could match that salary. There are a few players that could, and a few teams that could. But he has been the most popular name out there next to Max Crosby on the trade market. So Arizona, more than likely, will be cellar dwellers once again. And unfortunately, if that's the case, I don't like the chances for them to really get a good look at Carson Beck. Because I believe Carson Beck could be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. And right now, in that offense of Mike LaFleur, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody that's going to be able to start and finish the job. And I think Carson Beck can do that. All right, let's talk here very quickly about Major League Baseball. And I want to bring up a couple things here. Number one, broken earlier on today, Justin Verlander, who has been one of the best pitchers of the modern era, of the modern time, is going to retire after the 2026 season. He's a 3-time Cy Young Award winner, 2 World Series, and an MVP. It's a Hall of Fame career. He's 43 years old. He'll make his 10th All-Star Game appearance next week after being named a legend pick by MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred. He has 266 regular season wins and 3,554 strikeouts in 21 years. And he's the oldest player in Major League Baseball. And quite honestly, the All-Star nod by Rob Manfred is more of a thank you tip of the cap to Verlander versus his production for this year because he's been hurt. And he said today in his press conference, right now my focus is still to get out there and be the best version of myself I can be for this team. We're playing great baseball right now and things are going well and we're trending in the right direction. I'm chomping at the bit to be part of it. He was the number 2 pick out of Old Dominion University in 2004. He won the American League Rookie of the Year at age 23 in 2006 and followed that with 8 consecutive years of at least 200 innings. In the midst of that, he put up his best season in 2011, going 24-5 with a 2.40 ERA, 250 strikeouts, and 251 innings, marking the 24th time a pitcher won the MVP. After spending his first 12 and a half years in Detroit, he went to Houston in the summer of 2017, serving as the team's all-star ace that put a star-studded offense over the top to win a World Series. That was then tainted by a sign-stealing controversy. He won his second Cy Young in 2019, edging out Astros teammate Garrett Cole, and then turned in arguably his most impressive feat in 2022, claiming his third Cy Young in the wake of Tommy John surgery at the age of 39, while going 18-4 with a Major League best 1.7 ERA for another championship Houston Astros team. So, Monty, I see your comment, and I refute it because stats don't lie. 2022 was his last good season. His production has fallen, yes, but when healthy, he can still be a viable piece. I would say over the last 3 years, he hasn't been good. But 5 years puts him at that Cy Young award. And I would venture to say that anybody that's won a Cy Young award is a pretty damn good pitcher. Now, he without question is going to be a Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about it. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. In my book. He's got a career 3.33 ERA with over 3,500 strikeouts and over 3,500 innings, which ranked 8th all time. So Justin Verlander retiring at the end of 2026. Now, I want to bring up one other baseball story. We talked about it last night a little bit, and it's twofold. The Chicago White Sox lose again tonight, and I believe there are going to be some changes that are going to come for the White Sox. In terms of, I believe they're going to make a move, and one of the names that's being rumored right now is Boston Red Sox closer Aroldis Chapman. The White Sox are also talking about bringing back their big hitter in Murakami. If Murakami comes back before the All-Star break, that's what you need to know right then and there about the White Sox, because they're going to try to go for it. Now, could they be aggressive? Could Chris Getz, their general manager, former MLB player, be an aggressive team here and make a move? Absolutely. Do I think they will? I don't think so. But if they want to stake their claim to the AL Central, they have a great opportunity, and I think they're a year or two ahead of schedule. And we went over their roster last night, and they're a great young team. But without question, this team right now has the opportunity to really do something incredibly unique. And that's contend when they're not supposed to. The other thing I wanted to talk about was Pete Crow Armstrong of the Chicago Cubs. He has come on over the last, I would say, week or so. And since Craig Counsell moved him to the number one leadoff spot in the lineup, PCA has returned to his MVP-like performance. He crushed 2 home runs tonight, had 2 RBIs in the Cubs' 9-7 victory over the Baltimore Orioles. Colin Ray improves to 7-5. Michael Busch was 1 for 4. Seiya Suzuki was 1 for 4. Ian Happ 1 for 4. Nico Hoerner 0 for 3. Conforto 1 for 4. Carson Kelly was 1 for 3. Dansby Swanson 1 for 4. Dansby Swanson has been very good as of late, Monty. I talked about it last week on the show. He has stepped up, and he has been the Dansby Swanson that we saw in Atlanta, offensively. Defensively has never been questioned. He's very, very good defensively. But we've seen him over the last 3 weeks, I would say, return to form offensively. And it's about time. What we haven't seen, though, is Nico Hoerner break out of his slump. We haven't seen Ian Happ be Ian Happ. But we're seeing, again, an emerging star in Chicago in Pete Crow Armstrong, who now is up to 21 home runs on the season. His slash line right now, average is 296, OBP is 386, slugging 542. That'll get it done. And if you look at what he's done so far and what he's projected to do, 37 home runs, 91 knocked in. Last year with the Cubs, he had 31 homers, 95 knocked in, 29 walks, 35 stolen bases. If Pete Crow Armstrong is starting to heat up, that's a very good sign for the Chicago Cubs. What's not a good sign for the Cubs is their continued woes with pitching. I look for them to be aggressive. I look for them to put together an offer for Tarik Skubal. And based upon everything coming out of Chicago, the Cubs feel like their window is here. It's time to prop it open and be good for the next 5 years. To do that, you need an ace. Tarik Skubal would be that ace. You'll get back Cade Horton in a year. You'll get back Justin Steele in a year. Realistically, then, you're counting on Matthew Boyd, Shota Imanaga. You take the pressure off of them, which is good. You then have Javier Assad, who's been very good for you. Colin Ray, who's been very good for you. If you were able to go out there and you bring back Edward Cabrera, once he's healthy, you're then getting back your pitching staff that could help propel you into the playoffs. But you've got to be aggressive. You can't settle like a mid-market team. You have to be aggressive. And damn it, you're in the third biggest market in the United States. Make it happen, Jed Hoyer. Make it happen. And that's going to put a bow on this edition of the Last Row Podcast. I want to thank you so much for being with us, whether that's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you were with us on TikTok Live or on YouTube Live or X Live, thank you so much for being part of the program. We'll be back with you tomorrow night when we begin our breakdown of the AFC West, starting with the Kansas City Chiefs and the LA Chargers. I want to thank our friends at I Know a Guy Remodeling and Forever Finds Thrift for their continued support of the program. And we will be back with you tomorrow night when breaking news changes everything. And until next time, I'll see you in the last row.